Karl-Anthony with the pump fake and a one dribble inside to the long two, and he makes it. That's been his game his whole career. But look at him smiling. We go, my bad. The long two.
Welcome to another episode of The Long Two. I am Pete Rogers. He is Natty Wallach, and we are the least efficient fantasy basketball podcast you'll ever hear, but we get the job done. Natty, how are you today?
I'm all right, man. What's up? How you doing?
I'm good. Not too much on the old docket for me. But you've had a lot on your docket. You just released on Fake Teams your top 150 fantasy basketball guys. So make sure if you are doing your drafts at any point in the near future, make sure you go to faketeams.com and check out Natty's top 150 guys. We're going to run through some of your more I've picked out a few names here. Of guys who I think will be interesting to hear your opinion on.
I've been looking forward to this. Let's go. It's like
Perfect.
a challenge.
This is what this comes with any time you write top any kind of rankings. You always got to defend. And now it's time for you to, this is your defense. Think of it that way. Think of this as your final thesis, and now this is your defense.
And it's so dumb, man. I hate ranking. Like, I love all these guys. The worst part about this was like, man, I have to put these guys in my top 150, but I love these guys more. And it's terrible. What a terrible exercise. Everyone should just feel very excited about whoever they want. Just draft who you like, man. Because there's like no one in the NBA that I don't like, I don't think.
It's true.
Like,
who do you actively hate? Well, LeBron's done had his one mistake this week.
I mean, but I meant more like, who do you not like to watch play, or who just sucks? Also, LeBron's allowed to make like one mistake every 37 years.
All right, well, let's dive right into it, and we'll start with three rookies who you have. Obviously, we've spent some time on this podcast talking about Zion Williamson and our kind of expectations for the year, and how we both feel that he is being pretty wildly overrated, or not overrated, but just overhyped in fantasy this year. He's just not going to live up quite to the draft position that a lot of people are putting him at. But you have three rookies here: RJ Barrett, DeAndre Hunter, and Ja Morant, and I will give your rankings for them, and then ESPN Basics rankings currently right now. So RJ Barrett, you have at 118, DeAndre Hunter 125, and Ja Morant at 112, and ESPN respectively 71, 93, and 75. So you have them all in triple digits. They are not ranked in triple digits on ESPN. Give me your reasoning why you are lower on these rookies than seemingly other people.
One of the reasons is that when I look at these numbers, I'm not sure what types of leagues are drafting them. So
you're right off the bat, you're just kind of doing this huge sweeping thing like, wow, my rankings, don't take these too seriously. Just covering all your bases right from the get-go. I like it.
Well, I think that first of all, if they get the kind of volume that everybody's optimistic about, then they could totally be top 100 players. But they're rookies, and there are other people on their teams, and if they're not good right off the bat, then they're not going to get the minutes. Like, these teams don't need to tank in a way where it like makes your eyes bleed. Like they have players that can put a competent show on and still lose games. So like if Ja Morant sucks, like they're not just going to play him 30 minutes a game.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But also there are other players on these teams that need the ball. All of these guys are getting drafted really optimistic, like they're going to instantly be the stars of their teams, and I don't think that's true at all. I think there's other players that need the ball and are going to demand it. And rookie numbers are a crapshoot. They really are, because like sometimes the game's just too fast and you need a second to adjust. Sometimes it's too tough, like you're just not as big as everybody else. And sometimes it's just that, oh my God, there's 82 games. Like that's twice as many as I'm used to. So I'm pretty skeptical when it comes to rookies.
Yeah, and that makes sense. I mean, for all those reasons you hit on, like those are all things that can play into it. I'm most surprised. I mean, personally, I'm a little annoyed because DeAndre Hunter I just drafted onto my keeper league, and so I was kind of thinking that you would have him, as a top 25 player this year, just for my own benefit. But clearly, you didn't get the memo that I needed him to have
But
a good
like,
season.
who else is on his team? He has another rookie who maybe sort of plays the same position as he does. He has a point guard, Trey Young, who needs to be the star of the team. John Collins is there. Kevin Herter is there. Like, there's so many other mouths to feed on these young teams. I'm a little skeptical that these dudes are going to just waltz in and take over, especially because, like, before the draft, everyone was saying, oh, it's pretty top heavy.
Yeah.
Like, maybe this isn't a great draft after Zion. So we always want to be optimistic about rookies, and sometimes we're correct. Like Luka Doncic was pretty fucking good. DeAndre Ayton, sorry, was good. Um, these new guys don't feel like that to me.
That's fair. Of those three guys, who do you think is most likely to basically exceed your expectations?
I think Ja Morant is the correct choice. I think that RJ Barrett might have a better year, but I also think that the Knicks are such a weirdly constructed team, and might just be, a catastrophe. But I think RJ Barrett should be good. I think Hunter should be solid. I like both him and Cam Reddish, but Ja Morant has a chance to get the most volume, I think. And if he's good, then all of a sudden, like, that team might be really fun to watch, and you have two building blocks for the future.
Yep. All right, well, let's move on. We're going to climb up your rankings, and we're going to get to a guy who I think you might have mentioned on last week's podcast when we were talking about sleepers. But you have him as your 105th player on ESPN. He's their 130th. It's Dennis Smith Jr., point guard for the Knicks. I assume that this is a volume play, but tell me more about why not only will Dennis Smith get a shit ton of volume, but also be able to perform and utilize all of it and be good.
Right. So volume is like what I have written next to his name in my mind with an exclamation point, like all the time. It's like him. It's him. Um, the team, I think, like, Mitrob has to tone down on the fouls in order to be an effective player. If he does that, then he is definitely a building block for that team. Kevin Knox, like, couldn't defend you or me, and he takes, like, really horrendous shots, but he's super duper young. um RJ Barrett is a competent player, it seems like, and I think he'll just sort of slide right in, so it should be fine. The plethora of power forwards that they have is just sort of I think it's just them being dumb. Like, I can't really imagine why they thought it was a good idea to sign Julius Randle and then be like, "Oh, and then you have 3 backups
Wait, you
just
think
in
that's a
case."
bad idea? Oh, I thought that's exactly what you do with your max cap space.
Yeah, and, like, I think we've sort of talked about this on fake teams before, but, the idea that trading Kristaps was so that you could open up salary cap
So
space
you can get Kevin
for, like,
Durant and
all
Kyrie
the
Irving.
dudes that wanna come to the Knicks. Yeah.
Jesus.
And
That
who did
worked
they end up
so
with?
well.
Julius Randle. Like, there's and then 3 replacements. I mean, I savvy, like, maybe some of them are just trade assets. I hope all of them are. Um, DSJ is there to be a scoring point guard and hopefully the straw that stirs the drink. Frank Ntilikina, their point guard pick from 2 years ago, like, he's just not working out. He just can't score. At least in the NBA, he had a pretty good FIBA. But Ntilikina is a great, great defender. So if you can get those two to sort of complement each other as, on-off distributors, and you have guys that you can depend on for your first and second string, like, the Knicks need to find out what they have And Dennis Smith Jr. is something that they have. Like, that is an asset. They got a good asset back for that trade. But you have to find out what he is, and his volume and his potential dictate that you're going to do everything that you can to orchestrate your team's philosophy around making him better. Because Julius Randle's just going to do what Julius Randle does,
Which
and
is be
that's
good.
great. Yeah, that's great. He is a great compliment for, like, he and DSJ. I think will be a cool tandem this year.
So you have Dennis Smith Jr. ranked above 3 other point guards, and I want you to. And I know you said this, you already have this in your rankings, so you've already made it known that you would take this guy over these 3 guys. But I'm just curious because these are names that we've talked about: Patrick Beverley, Terry Rozier, and Lonzo Ball. You have Dennis Smith Jr. ranked over all of them. So you're saying that he is just going to have a better season for you in fantasy than those guys. Terry Rozier, we've talked about before on the show, and you wrote a huge article about him on Fake Teams about how his numbers are scary and how they might not translate as well as people think. But Lonzo Ball, we've talked a lot about how he could have a breakout season in New Orleans.
Yes, and that's a belief proposition. Like, we're hoping that he does.
Sure.
It could not work. Like, maybe Drew Holiday is like, actually, I'm the starting point guard, and I'm gonna stick with Zion, and you're a trade asset. So I would rather have DSJ than Terry Rozier every day of the week and twice on Sunday. Like, that's just straight up. I think Dennis Smith Jr. is a better basketball player. Pat Bev, like, I can see him not getting the shots that I hope he's going to get this year and just not being as good of an asset. Like, he'll still get all around stats that help you out, but I just, maybe he won't be nearly as highly ranked at the end of the year just because he won't get the volume. And Lonzo, I want Lonzo to be good, but it's Lonzo and then Ja, right? So, like, I do sort of feel like I think that he will be good. I just sort of think that Dennis Smith Jr., like, he's the guy that will be feeding Julius Randle and Mitch Rob. And, if Kevin Knox can't hit shots, then fuck them. Like, if they're like, if Frank Ntilikina, who, God bless him, Frankie smokes, like, if he can't put it together and score, then fuck him too. And God, if DSJ doesn't work out, then the Knicks are fucked.
Yeah, that is true. All right, so let's move on. Climbing your list, the next guy, Aaron Gordon, who you've got at 52 overall, and ESPN has him ranked 80th. We have spent some time talking about him because I am equally hyped on Aaron Gordon this year. I think Aaron Gordon has the tools to take the next step and maybe not be exactly Blake Griffin, but to be in that similar role of a hyper athletic big who can get you boards, get you points at the paints, but also is starting to develop a 3-point shot and is able to give you some stock. So I won't even ask why you have him here because I totally agree with you. I think he can be a top 50 player this year in fantasy.
He is 24 years old.
Jesus Christ.
Peter.
That shit just fucking blows my mind.
24 years old.
Just
okay.
Absurd.
Yeah. Do you think a 24-year-old can get better? Because I do.
Because I would be willing to bet that he can.
He had a 35 3-point percentage last year, I believe. Like, he's one of these dudes who needs a better free throw percentage. Yeah, he was in the low. Okay, he's in the low 70s for free throw for his career. Like, that's not good. If that trends up, then all of a sudden you're scoring several more points a game, and the whole stat line changes. Mm-hmm. Let's see, he was 66th last year in ESPN Basic, and I put him at 52 because basically I think a 24-year-old with several years under his belt and competitive experience can get better. I think Aaron Gordon has a chance to actually be a lot better than this. Like, if it all clicks, like, what if he's a 39 or 40% 3-point shooter this year?
Hell yeah.
What if his free throws go up? What if the magic just sort of click? What if Markelle Fultz is good?
That's something that
like,
yeah. Yep.
and Aaron Gordon is also playing with Nikola Vucevic, who's a stretch center. So you can see that the recipe for the Magic, if it all clicked, could really open up Aaron Gordon's game, because all of a sudden he's an all-around threat on a team with actual talent that can make space for him, and then they can defend as well. Now that's a lot of ifs. I didn't rank him in the top 25, but if everything clicks, I think he could be.
Yeah. No, I totally. And he shot, I think 4.5 threes per game last year. And I mean, if you round that to 5, like even just a slight uptick, even if his percentage still stays in that kind of mid 30s, maybe 36, 37, like if he just shoots more threes, then that's still more points. I mean, he did that the year before and was, I think, averaged like 17 points as opposed to the 16 or 16 and a half that he averaged last year. So we know that he can do that. Yeah, I obviously like him. And we're going to move on to Mike Conley, who you've also expressed a lot of interest and excitement about him in Utah. And I agree. I don't know if I have him. You have him 26 as compared to ESPN at 68. 26 seems a little rich for me, but I certainly know where you're coming from in that in this offense with Mitchell and with Rudy Gobert and Ingles, there's just a lot for him to actually work with, and not only just from an assist standpoint, but Mike Conley is a big upgrade over Ricky Rubio and is just a very good player. And I think people forget that because the Memphis Grizzlies are kind of an afterthought in the NBA world, and also just that the Grizzlies weren't the flashiest offense. They never have been. They're that, slow the pace down and grit and grind kind of offense. And now going to a team that might have a little more pace or have a little bit more kind of excitement or a little jazz, dare I say, to it. Conley could actually shine it and remind everyone that actually he is, maybe a top 10 point guard in the league right now.
Last year, Mike Conley was 31st overall.
Damn.
ESPN Basic. That's a good fucking player. He's a guy that is maybe not going to score as much, but his all-around game will improve. Last year, he was 21 points per game, 3 rebounds per game, 6 assists per game. I have to assume his assists will go up. His points might go down, but maybe not. I mean, he could be the best scorer on that team right away. He's good from long range. Like, there's no reason to think that a dude with his talent who is now in a better situation would do worse. So I don't think Utah is a team where like a bunch of dudes need to demand the ball outside of maybe like Don Mitch needs his shots. But I don't he wouldn't be shouting for them or anything like that. But like Rudy Gobert doesn't need to fucking score 20 points a game. I think Boyan got paid. Like he's just there to help out. There's no reason why he can't fucking be the scorer on this team.
No, I totally agree. I mean, I think Donovan Mitchell will probably be the guy for Utah this year. But I mean, there's no reason why Conley can't be number 2. And actually, because we're doing our top 5 centers later on in the show, it's a reason why. Spoiler alert. Yeah, spoiler alert. The Rudy Gobert is not in my top 5, and it's because of that. Because now there's another player there who can score, and that's just going to take the ball out of his hands.
So like Rudy Gobert's like 0, or he's like 0.5. He's obviously like at the top, but then
but he's not technically in that number 5 list. He's not a whole number, so I couldn't include him.
Wow. Are you just upset about FIBA? Come on, man. It's in the past. Chill out.
I never move on. It's the American way.
Totally hold a grudge. It's great.
We got 2 more guys to talk about from your top 150. Again, you should definitely, if you are fantasy basketball, go check it out at faketeams.com. But this guy, I am expecting a big year from him now that it's more or less his team in Toronto, but you have him in 21, Pascal Siakam. ESPN has him 12. I think 12 is a little high, so I agree with you that he's not there. But I do think that he is a top 15 guy this year, possibly. What is your reasoning for why he's kind of fallen out of that? Is there just too many other good players you have above him, or are you having a little bit of doubts in terms of how effective Pascal Siakam will be this year when the offense is him, basically?
I mean, I'd rather have Russell Westbrook. I'd rather have Dame Lillard. I'd rather have Drummond, Ben Simmons, Kyrie, Bradley Beal, Kawhi Leonard, AD, LeBron, Joker, Harden, Curry, Big Cat, and Giannis than Pascal. He's a dude that everyone assumes is going to work out because everything worked out for the Raptors last year.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll see how he does with the target on his back, because everyone's thinking that he'll be just as good as Kawhi and he'll be better than last year, and all of this is going to work out for Toronto. It might fucking implode. Like, it might just be 74 old dudes and Siakam. There's an OG Anunoby's there, but it's still to be determined whether he can actually shoot a basketball through a hoop or not. And they made some good pickups.
So much positivity and confidence coming from you right now,
dude, because like everyone's old, I mean, Kyle Lowry's 34, I think. Marc Gasol's 34. Serge Ibaka's over 30. Pascal's, I don't know, 3 minutes old. But he looked great on a championship team last year. If they're not a championship level team, is he going to look as great? And, like, I ranked him in my top 25. I think he's pretty fucking good. I can't really imagine a world where he gets, like, a lot worse.
Yeah.
And I do sort of think that the whole franchise has to be focused on what he can do. Like, I feel like Lowry's going to be, unless Lowry's like, fuck you, this is still my team, he's going to be trying to put Siakam in the best possible situation, as will Gasol, as will Serge Ibaka, as will Nick Nurse. Like, everyone's probably there for Siakam.
Right. Yeah. I guess I would just think that, other than his assists maybe going down, I just think that the usage there is there for him to, even if it's not an effective or an efficient, like, scoring output, that he averaged 16.9 last year points per game in 80 games. And I feel like that is the baseline for him this year. And maybe not. I just have a hard time believing that things would go worse from a scoring perspective. But maybe the other categories, assists, maybe his defense falters a little bit. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, there are some players where I'm like, oh, well, everything's perfect. And so I sort of try to look for the devil's argument where I'm like, oh, yeah, well, everything was sort of perfect last year. Like, what does a bad team look like?
Sure.
Also, this is a team where everyone could get traded.
Right.
Like, all of a sudden, it
they
could just be
to
him
blow
and
it
some
up.
scrubs. I mean, I don't think that he could be a top 10 fantasy player this year, but I think that there's, I don't know, an 8% chance that that's true. Like, if he becomes 20 points a game, and if he's 20 and 10 a game, like, sure. But I don't know. Like, I want the Raptors to do well this year, and I want him to do well, but I also sort of want to be very cognizant of the fact that, like, the Raptors want to blow it up. And
yeah,
like,
that does seem to just be kind of like hovering on the back of their minds at every point. Like, over the last 3 to 4 years, I have to get the feeling that that's just been kind of what they've been pushing for, and they've stumbled into this success. You know what I mean? It doesn't feel necessarily that they're like, oh, we're trying to build a contender and keep it around forever. They always like just hinting in the background is like, or we could just trade everyone and start again.
If Kawhi hadn't worked out, like, if they hadn't won the championship, everyone would be gone.
Oh, 100%.
And it would be Siakam and, like, I don't know, Willie Cauley-Stein or something. Like
Oh,
the team would
yes.
just look completely different. But because they won, they had an obligation to be like, okay, great. Like, let's run this back. And like, we still have all these trade assets. And even if they're good, they might decide to be like, yo, Kyle got paid. Like, if he wants to move on because he's 34, like if he'd like to go west, that's cool. Maybe it's like a mutual breakup, and then of course it would cascade and you can get rid of everybody else. Like, if the players don't think that they can win the championship this year, then they're so old that they so old. But like they're old enough where they can be like, yo, you know what, man? Like, we're not getting past Giannis, but like if you trade me somewhere out west, then maybe I would have a chance. Like, I think that's natural. I don't think anyone expects them to be in the finals this year, except for me. Just kidding.
Woo!
Go,
Saucy.
go Pistons. But I hope they're in the Eastern Conference Finals, because it would be amazing if it all clicks again. And maybe it would.
All right, last person we're going to talk about, and I saved him for last because I know this is your boy, and I know that you can tell it's your boy because he has your biggest jump between your rankings and ESPN. ESPN, he's ranked outside of the top 150. Here on your rankings, he's 58. Jeremy Grant, Denver Nuggets. I don't even want you to explain this pick. I'm just giving you a minute here to just talk about the glory that is Jeremy Grant.
So he was 69th in ESPN Basic last year. 67th was CJ McCollum. Jeremy Grant is a fucking stud. He is technically a backup, yes. But Paul Millsap is 34 years old too. Everyone's 34 years old, I think. Anyway, he's a dude who needs someone who can jump in and like play fast, because he can't go the whole game anymore, probably. Jeremy Grant is his inheritor. Like, he's going to look absolutely perfect next to Joker. And he can defend. He turned into what the Thunder wanted him to be when they drafted him, which was an athletic perimeter defender who learns how to shoot. Well, he learned how to shoot. And I still can't believe that they got him. It's crazy.
It blows my mind that when the Thunder was like going to do a whole rebuild, didn't keep him.
Yeah.
Like,
they
he
didn't need
seems
more picks.
the perfect piece to like build your team around.
if he was still on that team, then we would be like, oh yeah, well, Gallinari and CP3 and Steven Adams and Jeremy Grant is a team for sure. Absolutely. That's a good team. Fuck. Like, I'm so upset about it because, okay, if he's that good, then why is he a backup? That's totally a fair point. Absolutely.
But how long is he going to be a backup? He's not going to be a backup for long in Denver.
Dude. And it's like, it's one of those things where if you watch the games, you can tell how good he is and that he's getting better and he's still super young. And, being there is going to be great for him because everybody else is super good too. Man, his fit with Jokic, I think, is superb. I can't wait to watch those two together. I just think they're going to run and like fucking play weird inside out shit. And like, oh man, I think it's going to be great.
So I just pulled up his basketball reference tab just to look at his past stats and all that jazz. And they have their per game rows, and so they give him when you first came into the league and your current career and all that kind of stuff. But what they do is when there's a trade that happens mid-season, they then like split the line so that you have it with the team and then the team that he got, the two teams and what his stats line for each team, which adds extra lines to it. So I like load it and I look at it and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lines in his per game. Presumably when you first glance at it, you're like, oh, 7 years in the NBA. So I was like, oh, okay, well, he's not that young. And then you look at it and you realize that, 2 of those lines are the same year. He's 24 years old. He came into the league 20 years old and has basically just been like slowly getting better and better and better and better. And then last year finally got, the minutes that he deserves and fucking balled out, shooting 39% from 3, shot let's see, field goal, 49 from the field. He had 70% from free throw. He had 5.2 rebounds, 1 assist, 1.3 blocks, like 13.6 points. All of that is going to increase in Denver. All of that.
He's 6'9".
What more do you need to know?
Like, God damn it, man. He's one of those players where you just sort of look at the NBA and you wonder, what the fuck is everybody doing? Like, why aren't you trading for that guy? Because he seems gettable. And hello, he was, even when, they didn't need to trade him. Yeah, I kind of can't believe it. I feel like he's the dude that every team wants. And by the way, Houston is now down Gerald Green. And boy, they would fucking love to have someone like Jeremy Grant on their team.
Wouldn't that have just been sweet? Right. So there you go. So those are that's Natty's. Good job. You passed your dissertation. You defended it well.
I feel like you're being compassionate and merciful, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Hey,
I did perfectly.
You nailed it. No one can argue with any of your picks now. Before we go into our top 5 centers and onwards, let's take a quick ad break. All right, we are back, and it is time to wrap up our top 5 segment. We've been doing this for the last, quickly doing some math in my head, 4 episodes, 4 weeks, because there are 5 total positions on the basketball court, and we only have 1 left, so that must mean we've done 4. We are finally at it, the top 5 centers in fantasy basketball for this year. I have already alluded to the fact that Rudy Gobert is not in my top 5. So, Natty, we will start with you at 5. Who is your number 5?
I mean, okay. I don't know. I want to hear yours. You go first. Why isn't he there?
Why isn't he there?
Who's there?
Oh,
you witch. What are you doing?
I am speaking an amazing season into existence. It's Miles Turner is my 5th center.
Oh, you asshole. He's 6 for me. That's terrible.
Sucker. Yeah, he averaged 13 and 7 with almost 2 assists and 2.7 blocks, not stocks, blocks last year.
Yeah.
And he only shot 2.6 threes per game, but was hitting them almost 40% last year. Like, all he has to do is just shoot 4 threes per game, and all of a sudden now he's a 15-plus scorer. I think the rebounds will increase. Like, the main reason that I looked at Miles Turner and I looked at Rudy Gobert, and my biggest worry with Rudy Gobert was that maybe things will change, but that his minutes are capped because of how the NBA, how centers can play out by the 3-point line now. And so that he's not as effective as he once was as a rim protector. And the Jazz have shown that in crunch minutes, they tend to, you can only use him so often. So I think that puts a cap on his minutes. And I just don't think the scoring is that could decrease with Mike Conley, with a improved Donovan Mitchell. And so I have him on my fantasy team. I love the Stifle Tower. He's on my team. I hope he has a great season. And 6 or 7 is still a great season as a top at the position. But I think Miles Turner, just that 3-point shot is so tantalizing in today's NBA that I have a really hard time ignoring it and not being like, hey, playing the what if game.
You're a total dickhead. You should not talk shit about Rudy Gobert when he's on your team. You should be like, he's number 1, man. Yo, I play fantasy basketball. He's fucking number 1.
This shows you just how honest my rankings are. Even to the detriment of my own fantasy team, I'm bringing you the advice and information that you need.
Sure. To support that argument, Sabonis is an elite interior offensive presence. And so I think that Miles Turner is going to have to shoot more outside because it makes more sense for Sabonis. It's strangely, God, I really hope they can work it out. If they do, it's going to be incredible. Go Pacers. Not really though, because they're disgusting. Go Detroit. Okay. My 5 is Embiid. And I know that he could maybe be the number 1 player in fantasy this year, but I don't think it's going to happen. I think that it's going to be let's learn how to maintain Joel and focus on a couple of the other players that we have in the meantime. I think this is a Ben Simmons focus year. And I think Embiid's just going to drop enough in games played and minutes that his numbers will no longer be. I mean, what, he was fourth in scoring last year, I think. Like, I think that's going to drop.
I have Embiid as number 3 on my list.
Mm-hmm.
And again, everyone who's talking about Embiid knows exactly the only reason why he's not number 1, and it's health, it's games played. If he can play over 65 games this year, he's the number 1 center in fantasy for me, just because of the numbers that he can produce are absurd, and doing that across a fuller season.
Disagree. Like, Big Cat plays every single fucking game. He
Right,
plays.
but as I'm
He
saying,
plays like imaginary games after the real games. That's how many games he fucking plays. What the fuck has Joel Embiid ever done?
I think those guys are all very interchangeable. I think that I was trying to talk myself into Embiid being lower than 3, and I think so. I'm just saying I agree with you in that he could be 5. He could even fall out of the top 5, because I think the Sixers, especially if Ben Simmons has a 3-point shot, could be moving the offense's focus away from him and trying to preserve him and playing we don't care about fantasy sports, we care about winning games, and we're going to have slowly manage and massage Joel's minutes.
I also think the Sixers are going to play sort of slow this year.
Hmm.
I think they're going to be a monumental defensive team, and I think that, like, it's going to be interesting to see what they do when they go small, because Al Horford doesn't really want to play center anymore.
Right.
So will Ben Simmons play center when they go small and then
That's the
Embiid
dream.
sits? Because there's 2 dudes, Zaire Smith, their rookie from last year, who didn't play because of injury. So I guess technically he's a rookie this year. And Matisse Thybulle or Tibble, I'm not sure how you say his last name. Both those guys are supposed to be like pretty good defenders. Um, so Philly's going to have like 8 dudes that can really defend well. And I don't know if it really behooves you to run when you can say that, like,
Yeah.
I'm not suggesting that Philly should just like try to grind it out, but you know, you don't really want Embiid like running 30 miles every game.
No.
Like, you
No, it'll
don't
be
want Horford doing that. Maybe like maybe they are slow this year. Maybe they're very methodical. Maybe it's all about like shot selection and getting people in their spots and then like defending. I don't know. But
yeah.
I feel like it would be weird to watch them move super, super fast.
No, I agree with that. Yeah. All right. As now is per tradition of these top 5 rankings, I'm gonna bump Embiid down to number 4. You convinced me, because I agree with everything you're saying, and I think that this vision you have for the Sixers actually makes a lot of sense. And plus, I just was realizing while you were talking that we've already penciled in Tobias Harris for being the number 1 scorer in Philadelphia. So if that happens, Embiid can't be a top 3 center.
Yeah, and we already mentioned, like, what if Ben Simmons actually is a 3-point shot, in which case he could be the MVP. So, like,
Also, Ben Simmons needs to play center. They need to put Ben Simmons at center for at least like 10 minutes a game.
I do sort of feel like there will be times where they like sort of match him up with small ball centers. It makes too much sense.
I just want to see him and Draymond go toe to toe. Let's do this. Let's have a fight.
Yeah, and also doing that means that Josh Richardson can like probably move down a spot, and then all of a sudden, like, you have this overpowering like big guard / wing that's defending your point guard. Like, Philly's going to be really, really, really tough this year.
They're gonna be fun.
And Horford and Simmons and Embiid versus Giannis. That's
Woo!
a pretty good fucking trio you can throw at the MVP.
Yeah. All right. So now Embiid's my 4. So who's your 4?
My 4 is the Gall Wall, Rudy Gobert.
Okay.
I think he will be again improving on a great year, just like every other year of his NBA career. I think having more shooters is actually going to open things up for him. I think he will score more this year,
Okay.
just because I think it will be a little bit easier. And I sort of feel like he's one of these dudes that we've talked about who's going to be pissed off this year. I think Rudy Gobert is going to be really pissed off this year.
Especially after listening to this podcast.
I mean, well, like, okay, you're Rudy Gobert. Like, Gordon Hayward's left right when you were really getting good. And then Ricky Rubio's gone, and now there's someone new, and Boyan is new. And, like, you've actually seen a bunch of change for a team that I think we all sort of feel is pretty conservative when it comes to personnel and changeover. And now you have a team that people think could be the best one you've been on. Maybe you want to be the face of this franchise. Maybe this is Rudy Gobert's team. There's a world in which he understands that he can't be dragged out from the, like, both of the games that he played against Brooke Lopez last year, he had a negative plus minus rating.
Right.
You know, I think he like got points in one of them, but he just like really didn't play well. So he either needs to adapt and learn how to defend the perimeter, which, ouch. But, you know, he's an all defensive player and
Right.
he's
You
defensive
can be
player
able
of
to
the
do
year.
that.
So I think he's still young. He gets better every year. He's now on probably the best team he's ever been on. So that's why, despite his low scoring points, I think that there's a lot to believe in with the French rejection.
Yeah, I'm not going to disagree with that. I think, as always with these lists, they're all pretty interchangeable. And I'm just wanting to speak a Miles Turner season into existence, but I would not be surprised if Rudy Gobert also finishes in the top 3. Like I said, he's probably my 6. So, and he's
Sure.
even on my team. So, but yeah, I could definitely see again, like you were saying, I think the scoring that I'm less convinced on, but I can see something where there's more space for him to operate now. And maybe even he becomes a little bit more of a distributor. Nothing crazy. He averaged 2 assists last year. Maybe that goes, up half an assist, which still is a little bit of extra something to add into his game.
Dude, also another guy who, the free throws. Like the free
Yeah.
throws.
Yeah. That's
If
fair.
you can get those above 75%, preferably into the 80s, everything else unlocks.
Yeah.
Like what was he last year?
He shot 63% last year.
I mean, sweet Jesus. Like, I mean, that's not like Drummond bad, but that's pretty fucking
It's pretty
bad,
bad.
man. Like, you got to make those. I know it's weird. It's obviously like a real thing because a lot of people can't do it, including LeBron. But you have to be able to make 70%. You really do.
Right. Yeah, especially if you're shooting almost 6.5 per game. Okay, number 3. You'll be happy to hear my number 3. Maybe it's your number 3 as well.
Yeah, I kind of feel like we probably have the same 6.
We might.
Yeah, so go ahead. Who is it?
I mean, it's Drummond.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ditto.
And my notes just say rebounds, 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 and more rebounds.
I kept wanting to do devil's advocate with him and be like, man, he could just have a shitty year and, like maybe his shots would go down, but I couldn't really figure out good reasons why any of that would happen. Like, he's a focal point of the offense. He is the future of the Pistons along with Blake Griffin. They're such a fucking weird team this year. Joe Johnson's on that team, and Derrick Rose is on that team.
I love it. I am here for it.
Happened.
Also,
man?
He's 25 years old. What the fuck is with young ass NBA players just like feeling like they've been in the league for a billion
years? Like it was a million years ago. Yeah,
Jesus.
Dude, like, yeah, it's sort of strange. He should be older than that.
He should be so much older. It's also partially because maybe because everyone refers to him and he's like feels like he's trapped in like the old center days where you have that big presence in the paint and gets rebounds and scores, in the post and has no outside shot and it's just a big body that's not hyper athletic, and so I just feel like he should be 50 years old and this is the game that he's born to play.
Okay, so let me give you a stat real fast. Joel Embiid last year averaged 18.7 field goal attempts per game. Drummond averaged 13.3. Drummond averaged 17 points per game last year. If he gets just a couple more shots, which he should, then he'll be a 20-point per game scorer. And then you're getting a dude who's giving you 20 and 16, maybe 20 and 17. Like, he's 25. He should get better. If his free throws, I mean, it was sub 60% last year, which.
But those last 2 seasons, he shot 59 last year and the year before that 60. And then prior to that, his high was 40.
Dude,
so like something,
my God.
but like there was something that clicked. And, I'm not saying that he's suddenly going to click.
Such a dark time.
Yeah, literally.
It was just like getting stabbed with knives made of other knives. It was so bad.
I'm not going to say he's going to click again and he's going to start shooting 80, but even if that is like 64 or 5%, that's a big uptick.
Also, a lot of shit has been talked about Embiid getting in his head, but Drummond, like, he's just not that sort of player that he's a professional sort of blue collar player. Like, he's there to do his job. Like, he doesn't try to do star-studded shit. Like, he does his charity stuff, and he tends to keep sort of a low, humble profile, and he's always, like, helping out the team and helping out the town and trying to welcome everybody in, even though he's been the one constant, and he's always positive about the Pistons. It's a little bit weird because the Pistons have a bad boy history, but, like, him and Blake Griffin together has been good. I have liked it. I think in retrospect, like, the trade is pretty much working out. The Pistons have a player in Blake Griffin who has put up just beneath MVP numbers, and that's what the fucking Pistons needed. Reggie Jackson, like, the season depends on whether the guards can play well. If the guards can't play well and the Pistons can't shoot from outside, then the Pistons won't go to the playoffs. It's as easy as that. But Drummond is the rebound king. He is, I don't know, he's 25. Like, he's the exact same age as Embiid. It's hard to argue that either of those guys are going to drop that much in value.
No. Yeah. And anyone who drafts Drummond knows exactly what they're getting. Even if anything slips, he is going to get you 14 rebounds a game at the bare minimum.
Dude, and who else is playing center on the Pistons,
No one.
Who's load managing Drummond? Fucking nobody. Dude's a tank. He's great.
All right, so number 2 and number 1. Number 2, I got Jokic. I assume that's similar, same for you. Yeah.
Fuck yeah.
This is just the most preposterous stat line for a center. 20, 10, and 7 last year. What the fuck? That is unreal. It's just I was looking at this ranking charts, that has all of the last year's stats from all the centers. You can break it down by position, and it highlights in green all of the good stats and that are above average and whatnot. And Jokic's 7.3 assists or whatever was the darkest green this site has to produce, because every other fucking center on the list was averaging like at most like 2 assists per game.
Here's some of the other players in the NBA last year who averaged fewer assists per game than the Joker, Nikola Jokic, who is a center. D'Angelo Russell, Kyrie Irving, Damian Lillard, Devin Booker, Mike Conley, Ricky Rubio, Chris Dunn, Luka fucking Doncic, Kemba fucking Walker, Eric Bledsoe, Lonzo Ball. I mean, like, Steph Curry. The dude is clearly some kind of savant. Like, he sees passes that like aren't there until he starts to make them. It's a real weird thing. It's sort of like slow-mo Kyle Anderson. Like, things are happening at a pace a little bit too slow to catch. Like, you get everybody off guard, and it just looks so weird. It's like
everyone's just kind of watching and they're like, no, he's not gonna do that. He's not gonna. Oh, there goes the ball. The ball just went by me because I wasn't. Oh my god. Oh, what a perfect pass. Holy shit.
Like, we didn't even. How did he see that guy?
Right.
The whole thing's weird. And there's no reason in the whole goddamn world why he won't get better.
No.
Like maybe I mean, I guess what's the counter argument that having like more good players will negatively impact him? Yeah, okay. I can see that. Like more mouths to feed, I guess. Like maybe he doesn't have to play as much. But he's 24 years old and he only played 31 minutes per game. Like if he was playing 34 minutes per game, like what would his numbers look like? Uh and again, I think he and Jeremy Grant are just gonna fucking run all over the goddamn league, and they're just gonna be incredible. I kind of want to say the Nuggets are in the finals, but I'm not. I'm not going to say that. No.
That's
I'm not
saucy.
going to
No,
say
I
because
like
I
it.
don't
I
believe
like it.
that. I don't believe it.
Yeah, and when we just spend 5 minutes gushing about Jokic, it just makes Karl-Anthony Towns all the more impressive because he is both of ours just through process of elimination number one center this year in fantasy. He was 25 and 12 last year. I think he can hit two more threes. He can hit 2 threes a game this year, average maybe 5 assists, and now all of a sudden he's even better than what he was last year.
Wouldn't it be funny if he wasn't my number one?
Yeah, and you're just like,
right. If I was like, no, man, it's Thomas Bryant. What are you talking about?
Dwight Howard in L.A.? Like,
yeah,
the
Time Lord, dude. What are you talking about?
Well, that I could believe. That I could understand.
Are you late to the party?
Oh,
better
shit.
Get your watch. Yeah, Big Cat is the fucking man, dude. Like I can't believe how fucking young all these dudes are.
It's absurd.
He's 23.
The NBA has such good young talent. Holy fuck.
Fucking crazy. Okay, here's the thing. Karl-Anthony Towns is not as good on defense as Anthony Davis is. However, Karl-Anthony Towns can play 82 games a season, and Anthony Davis sure fucking can't. So I love all these people who are like, no, draft AD first, even though he's on the same team as LeBron James. Meanwhile, Big Cat's there, and he's really the only player outside of Giannis where I'm like, okay, you took him first. I get it.
Yeah.
That's fine. He does absolutely everything in fantasy that you want him to. And shit, like maybe some of his defensive stats go up. Who knows? Maybe he just gets better at everything since he's 23 years old. Also, that team fucking sucks, and there's nothing else to do other than try to inflate Wiggins's trade value and like keep Cat happy. And I sort of feel like there's a world where you can get him to 30 points a game. I think that would take him buying into it, and it would be really, really tough. I mean, that sort of effort is exhausting. You'd also, I think, have to be okay with them not making the playoffs because I think that would mean that like you just sort of starve some of the other players on the team, and I'm not sure if that's cool. But Minnesota, like if they were in the East, I have no doubt that Cat could get them to the playoffs. I have absolutely no doubt. But they're in the West, man, and it sucks.
The fucking West.
And I don't know how I feel about that team. Like we both think Jeff Teague is going to be good, and we think Cat's going to be good.
And that's
Who else is gonna be good? Like we don't know if the coach is good. We don't know if the actual franchise is doing okay. It's a team that I guess could trade people, but like, who do you want on that team?
I don't know who you make that trade.
So I don't know, man. Like this might be a lost year, but then if you're Karl-Anthony Towns, you should be telling yourself, no, fuck that. This is not a lost year. This is my year. And like, you just go out and you kick ass and like, fuck the team, fuck everybody else, fuck the entire NBA, fuck the world. Like I'm getting every bucket I can. I'm going to try to be in the MVP conversation, even if my team sucks. Or like if you're going to be the MVP, it probably doesn't mean that your team sucks, but your win-loss record can't compete with the 12 other good teams in the West. So, he's a center who can shoot threes. Maybe I should have just said that.
In summary, Yeah, and it doesn't obviously this doesn't matter at all in fantasy in the long terms. But if you look at those guys on the list who we talked about at center, Cat's the only one who I will confidently say will have at least like 6 or so 40+ games. Which doesn't mean anything in like the long term of fantasy. You don't get extra points for how many points you score in a game. But he is the only center who we've talked about who I have confidence in being like he can just have a night where he just gets you like 40 points and is the best player on the court. And everyone's like, well, I just won my week this week because Cat just went absolutely fucking ballistic and he decided to carry the team on his back.
Yeah, I mean, like, I'd rather have Karl-Anthony Towns than all but a handful of other players in the NBA.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
And so it's really hard for me to say that, like, oh, well, even though that's true, I'm going to like discount the fact that I think he's incredible and like maybe he just sucks this year. No fucking way. He's going to be better than he was last year. All of his numbers will improve. I have absolutely no doubt of that. The only thing standing in his way to me is injury because he has nothing but opportunity this year. It's his fucking team. Andrew Wiggins is nothing. Like, who cares? There's nobody else on this team. It's all about him. And so that means that he's either going to maintain or he'll have an incredible elite year, or maybe it's a little much and he needs some help.
Awesome. Well, there you go. Top 5 centers, convoluted list as always, but we got there eventually and had synchronous harmony towards the end. Before we go, Natty, fave thing of the week. What do you got?
So my fave thing of the week is baseball.
Ooh,
I am totally
you're digging the
enjoying
playoffs?
this postseason.
Yeah.
Dude, starting pitching, it's great, man. I'm so glad it came back down to this because, like, okay, so I'm a Tigers fan, and I am really hoping for a Verlander versus Scherzer World Series game.
Ooh,
because
that would be
just it would be great because I love both those dudes. I think they're both Hall of Famers. Nationals versus Astros would be a super weird World Series, but sort of very cool. And you know, that's also had me sort of thinking about other duos because like the Tigers had both of them obviously and like that's brutal. And so I was thinking about, oh, what are some other twos? And just to bring it back to basketball, I sort of landed on like, oh man, wouldn't Luka Doncic look really good next to Devin Booker this year?
Woo!
And I just started thinking about the draft again and I'm like, fuck Phoenix, like Aiton's good, but what if you had Luka?
God,
Like,
what
if those two were together?
I
I wouldn't watch any team harder than I would watch the Phoenix Suns if those two were together.
There would be no other team to watch. It would just be
they'd
like
black them all out. Be like, who cares?
Just be like, we're only watching the Phoenix Suns. That's the only.
Like, if you had those two dudes, you don't need to get a point guard. Like, you can just focus on the rest of your team.
Oh my God. Oh, Phoenix. What a wonderful, wonderful team you are.
Anyway, what was your fave thing?
My fave, can it be Carson Edwards going 8 for 11 from 3 in the third quarter against the Cavs right now?
No, it can't.
It can't be that. It can't be Carson Edwards cementing the fact that he's the steal of this year's draft and every other team in the NBA is stupid for passing him. Can it be that?
It's not that they had good reasons. It's that they're stupid.
It's that they're
dumb buttheads.
They're a dumb butthead. Yeah, I didn't have much fave thing, and I was just watching the game on the side, and Carson Edwards just went fucking on fire from 3, and so I was like, all right, this is something that is my fave thing, is Carson Edwards just heating up and becoming the best shooter in the NBA.
Well, can I ask you something that might be your fave thing then?
Of course.
So, as we said earlier, the Rockets are down Gerald Green, one of their wings, and so they're pretty fucking thin, these Rockets. Do you think that it's possible that they could bring Melo back?
Oh my God. Yes. 100% yes.
I would also like to say that Ejuan Moore, who is currently on the Pelicans, has a $7 million expiring contract. And the math works for him and Ben McLemore and Isaiah Hartenstein, whatever. Like, the Rockets are going to have to make a trade. They're going to have to do fucking something. Because
and it's bringing Carmelo out of retirement. I'm in. You've convinced me.
Like,
don't say anything else. I'm 100% in.
I mean, it would be the longest too long two ever. It would just be incredible.
We would I don't even know what we would just, most of it would just be silence. It would just be us sitting in silence, basking in the greatness and glory.
But I was thinking about it because it's like all of a sudden that Joe Johnson signing by Detroit sort of looks pretty smart, because it's like, yeah, you can have Joe Johnson for, I don't know, a draft pick 7 years from now or something, like, for nothing. Who cares? Here he is.
Joe Johnson, Big Three MVP and greatest player in league history.
Like, there's dudes that are going to be traded when they're allowed to be traded in a couple of months. I think December 15th is when people can start going.
Mm-hmm.
And a bunch of the dudes on the Pelicans are going to be available. And teams already need help. So, like, this is going to be really, really weird. Because there might just start being, like, early buyout candidates who are like, fuck this. No, like, I can't get traded, so just buy me out on cheap anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I don't know, like, everyone is sort of like coming into the season in a weird way, not just because of the China stuff, but also because there was so much movement this year that I think a lot of teams were sort of caught flat-footed in terms of depth. And so, like the Rockets, they all of a sudden, like, have a really glaring hole.
Yeah. Yeah, this is a weird lead up to the NBA season. It's going to be an interesting year, and I am 100% here for it.
Oh, ditto. Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. Well, there you go. Make sure to subscribe to wherever you get your podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, Whole 9 Yards. We are there. Fake Teams Podcast channel. Follow us on Twitter at The Long Two Podcast. We will be back at you next week. Until then, Natty, have yourself a good week.
Everyone watch Pete's videos. They're great. Have a great week, y'all.
Stop your
Bye.
tweet.